meeting to order. It's meeting of the Harwich Planning Board. Today is Tuesday, October 25th, and it's 6:30 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is a continuation of the public hearing from September 27th and October 13th. And I don't have to read that since we've read it twice already. That would be Camelot. Counselor?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Ford representing the applicant, and Jim Stinson, co-counsel with me. When we were last here, we made our presentation to the Planning Board under the zoning bylaw and reviewed all of the various criteria for the special permits that we had applied for. We reviewed the staff report and the comments under the staff report and addressed all of those. And we reported to the board that with respect to our two neighbors' properties, that we continue to work in earnest on a development agreement, which we indicated to the board was necessary in order for this plan to go forward, as portions of the combined site plan that we had filed are located on their properties. And so it was agreed that the Planning Board would hear the hearing, let us put the case in, and then keep the public hearing open for the purposes of our reporting back this evening on whether we were able to reach a development agreement with those two neighbors. And I'm pleased to report that with the hard work of everyone involved, we have been able to reach that development agreement. And so what I'd like to do this evening is simply walk the Planning Board members through the basics of what the development agreement consists of. And then I have a proposed condition that I have shared with Charlene, by which the development agreement would be incorporated into the special permit, should the board see fit to grant them. And that condition, which I'll touch on in a little more detail later, also doesn't place any obligation on the town for the enforcement of the obligations of the parties under the development agreement. So with that, let me review. The development agreement is between three property owners: the applicant, which is, of course, 525 Camelot LLC, Mr. Manning. Then it also involves the property owner to the I'll call it the east, which is Avalon, which are the Waste Acts, and Joe Delamorte, which is the property to the west. And so we have a plan that's attached to the development agreement. The Delamorte property is shown as parcel A on that plan. The applicant's property is B, and the Waste Acts property is shown as parcel C. And I do that just to give context to the agreement itself. Was the plan attached? If not, maybe we have a couple of copies. Maybe Jim will pass some around while I'm going through it.
We have some in front of us.
Yeah, we do have one.
Yes, it's that one.
When is it? This one. Okay, got it.
And that is, I'll mention the caveat, that plan doesn't completely mirror the site plan, although there's nothing different on it. There's just a lot more information on the site plan. But this plan specifically addresses the development agreement itself and focuses on various easements that are agreed to be granted and attached to the development agreement and have, in fact, been executed by the parties as of today. And so it makes the development agreement easier to understand and will be an exhibit to the development agreement and the easements when they're recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So first of all, the development agreement sets forth that it is for the purpose of access, egress, and parking. It recognizes there are existing easements that the Waste Act property and the Manning property enjoy reciprocal easements over each other's property that will be terminated once this development agreement goes into effect and the easements attached to it are recorded. It then provides under paragraph 3 that the applicant, Camelot, Mr. Manning, at his sole cost and expense will be responsible for the improvements that are shown on the site plan to be submitted. Whether or not those improvements are on the Delamorte property or on the Waste Act property Camelot bears the sole responsibility for undertaking those improvements at their sole cost and expense, be they taking up the parking lot, taking up the existing building, placing the new parking lot, all of the drainage and stormwater, and obviously the construction of the new building, and all the appurtenances and things that are shown on the site plan. So the cost of the development is on the applicant, which is Camelot, and paragraph 3 recognizes that. Camelot will carry, under the development agreement, builder's risk. It will protect all the parties to the agreement, and there's some hold harmless provisions in there. The parties have agreed to a construction protocol. There's a recognition here, which our two abutters educated us was extremely important to them, and that is that a proper construction protocol be put into place prior to all this work starting, so that disruption of the various businesses that go on their properties would not be disrupted, or at least there'd be minimal disruption during this process. So we've agreed to those joint protocols. Signage and reserve parking, there's the cost of placing signage for the reserve parking, again, will be borne by the property owner on whose property it exists. This plan that we've referred to shows that the Manning property will have 10 reserved parking spaces for the uses that are proposed for its building, which, as you recall, is residential and retail. The reserved spaces would be for the residential portion of that building. And they're located directly behind the building on spaces 15 through 19, 21, 22. And then we put some down in the back of the lot, 43, 44, and 45, so as to kind of keep a presence in the back of the lot, which we were asked to do by a number of folks, including abutters. The Waystack property has 10 spaces on its site, which will be exclusive to the uses in the Waystack building. The Della Morte property has the exclusive use of spaces 1 through 7. Those are those 3 spaces that currently exist but will be reconstructed along the side of the store. You come in off of Main Street. And then a total of 4 additional spaces right behind the store. As to all of the spaces that are not designated as reserved, they're common area parking for the benefit of all of the businesses on the various properties. So those are the reserved spaces, and the rest of the parking spaces are to be used in common. There's some provisions I won't review with you, that the certain mortgagee assents will be obtained on the easements. There'll be recording fees that will be upfronted. Maintenance is going to be shared going forward after the construction is completed, and they've agreed on a percentage as to who would participate and to what degree in that maintenance that will involve snow removal, sweeping, cleaning, and policing the site. So the parties have reached agreement on that. Each party will be responsible for carrying their own liability insurance. To the extent that curb cuts are undertaken from Route 28, they'll be done solely at the applicant, Camelot's, expense. The parties have a provision for enforcement of the development agreement and have rights to do that, that are specifically provided for. There's a post-construction obligation to repair the parking area where it's been removed on A, B, and C, and obviously that's at the sole cost and expense of the property owner going forward on whose property it exists. Amendments or modifications to this agreement can be made by the parties with mutual agreement. However, the parties have agreed that the plan that's before you, if there are any amendments to the planning board, then all of the parties will be notified of that and consented in writing to changes on the plan. So we've agreed this is a joint enterprise, and to the extent there's going to be changes, it needs to continue to be a joint enterprise, and we would present it that way to the planning board. The parking plan that I've been talking to is referenced in paragraph 15, and then there's some miscellaneous provisions that I don't think are necessarily apt to the planning board. So that's the development agreement. We're pleased that we've been able to reach it, and certainly I know Mr. Manning appreciates very much the cooperation and assistance of the Delamortes, the Waystacks, and their counsel, Mr. Kroll, in reaching the agreement. We then wanted the planning board to reference the agreement, and yet have a condition that didn't require the town to enforce the agreement. Because last thing Town Howard needs is one of the three parties calling up and saying, so-and-so didn't pay 20% of the maintenance, or somebody didn't snowplow, or somebody doing this. That's not the role of the town. But we felt it was important that the agreement be presented as part of the package and incorporated into the permit. So what we've done is given you a suggested special permit condition that in the first paragraph simply lays out what the agreement is, and then in the second paragraph seeks to have you incorporate the development agreement, the easements, and the plans, and referenced in the special permit, but that the performance of the obligations of each party to the development agreement shall not be a condition of the special permit, as the development agreement has independent legal significance and is enforceable by the parties. And that way, the town doesn't get in the middle of having to be an arbiter or an enforcer of the agreement itself, but yet it's referenced and made part of your special permit. So that was our proposed condition. I can tell you that condition has also been approved by the Waystacks and Delamorte and their attorney, Mr. Kroll. So that, in a nutshell, is the development agreement. Happy to take questions.
I'm the one that has to make the motion. Is it your sense, then, that we would incorporate by reference the development agreement into the special permit vote?
It is. In fact, the condition, as I see it, would be that second paragraph. You could put the entire 2 paragraphs in. I think for identification purposes, it's probably better to do it that way. So yes, to answer your question directly, I would ask that unless you have some issue with it, the parties have worked that language out.
I just want to put it in the right
Yeah,
place, that's all.
yeah.
Okay, I
As a
understand.
condition, yes.
Do you have that written out?
Vote number
Yes, we
2.
do.
It's right here, I have it.
Oh,
Right here, we've submitted it.
Okay.
That would be your vote number 2, condition number 3.
Right, there's already 2 conditions Charlene has, and that would be number 3. Jim, did you have
Not vote 1.
Not vote 1, vote 2.
Okay, all right,
When you get to that point,
Okay.
okay.
Jim?
yes.
Okay, quick question. Did you say that this development agreement will be recorded?
The development agreement, I don't believe will be recorded. The easements will be recorded.
The easements will be
Right.
recorded, okay.
They would have to.
Right,
Don't
they
forget to use your microphones, because if people are watching at home and or want to watch later, cannot hear you at all.
But we've given an executed copy of the agreement to Charlene to include with your file and to reference in your permits.
Okay, thank you.
Linda?
So it's not going to be recorded? Joe, I saw you say it should be,
No,
or
no,
I think Joe said the easements should be.
The easement.
easements, but why not the development agreement?
Well,
I'm just curious.
Not to expand on this issue too much, but in previous practice that I've done with regard to development agreements, they can't be directly recorded, but I've recorded them as exhibits to either an easement or a deed.
Well, the heart of the development agreement is the easements, which create the rights as between the parties. So that is critical, and they have to be recorded to grant the rights intended to be granted under them. The development agreement, for the balance of that, is more of a contract between the parties, enforceable between the parties. It's like a private contract.
Right,
and
correct.
It's really nothing, it's not the kind of instrument you would normally see at the Registry of Deeds. In fact, if you were to go to the land court, they probably wouldn't record it.
Right, well, you're absolutely correct, and that's why in my practice, when I was working in Boston, when there was a feeling that there was a need to get those terms on record, we used the mechanism of having it as an exhibit to an easement, and not independently recorded.
But the easements will all be individually recorded.
That's correct.
Well, the easements would have
Have to be, yeah.
In fact, every
recorded,
easement
yes,
that's
correct.
recorded, there's going to have a sketch plan attached. And the reason we do that is it makes it easy to understand what the easement is all about.
sketch plan that you've seen will be recorded.
Picture
I mean,
being
we're
with
trying to
it.
reduce what's complicated to simple and understandable, and I think we've come a long way in doing that and achieving that goal, and I don't see the need for the development agreement as relates to the various provisions of who's gonna pay for what, that Mr. Manning, that Camelot is gonna pay for all the infrastructure improvements. It's really nothing that there's any need for notice of, at least from our perspective.
But we thought the board should see it and be able to incorporate it as part of
Okay.
your permit.
But-
The one concern I'd have is that to the extent the parties agree to amend it, fine, but by means of terminating that agreement, to the extent it's a condition of the special permit,
Well, that's a requirement between us and the board, that we have to come back here if there's an amendment or a modification that involves, something that only the board can act upon.
They'd have to come back here, I think.
Well,
And
let's be clear.
That's the question.
This is a contract. And so amendments to this contract wouldn't necessarily have to come back to the board, except to the extent that they affected the plans. If they affect the plans that you approved, clearly it's a planning board matter, and we would have to come back to the planning board. But the rest of it is a private contract that which you gave you for informational purposes. So that's another reason that it isn't going of record, because the parties might well change things in it by mutual agreement. Things that are of contract law but really don't have anything to do with the planning board.
but to the extent that they would affect a parking plan or,
Exactly. If you look at paragraph 14 of the development agreement, it specifically provides that the provisions of this agreement may be amended or modified by mutual agreement of the parties. However, any subsequent changes from the plan as approved by the planning board and incorporated into its decision must receive subsequent planning board approval, unless agreed to in writing by all parties, excepting in such cases where planning board action is mandatory. So, we've recognized that in the contract.
okay.
I have one further question. What happens if one of the parties sells their interest in the real property?
Goes with it.
That's why we have easements that run with the land.
Okay, but do those easements, and I haven't seen the copy of the easements, do the easements incorporate the maintenance agreements
I don't
that are in the development agreement?
No, they don't.
That's
Okay,
that would be a contract that would be enforceable between the parties.
okay, but if one of the parties were to sell their interest, that party would no longer exist.
But it would go with it.
Yeah,
Well, unless it was recorded or there was notice, it wouldn't run with the land.
well, it doesn't have to run with the land, the contract.
No, I'm not saying that it has to.
Right.
I'm just saying that the only concern that I would have about it not running with the land is if one of the parties were to sell.
And if one party sells, then obviously they're going to give notice to the next party that there's a development agreement regarding the CAM, to take care of the
Because that's gonna
property and
be-
what it is.
That's going to be available in the records of the town, filed with the town clerk as part of the, that's why we've presented it. So that's the public access to the development agreement. I think it's going to stay with the file here, we'll give them to the,
Okay, but would it be binding on a successor owner of a piece of property?
Sure.
yes, it would.
It would be? Okay.
Goes with the property.
Now, if it's not recorded, it wouldn't run with the property necessarily.
Wouldn't come up in a title search,
But
certainly.
the
Right,
no,
it
but
won't.
the easements will be recorded.
The easements will be recorded, and that will run with
that's
the
what I'm
land.
trying
Yeah,
But the maintenance agreement that backs up the,
right, and
the
that's
development
stated in
isn't
the
gonna be
development
there.
agreement.
Let me draw your attention to paragraph 12, just for a moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Just humor me and look at 12.
Okay.
Enforcement of the development agreement. The provisions of this development agreement shall be binding upon and shall be specifically enforceable by the respective parties hereto, their heirs, personal representatives, successors, or assigns.
Okay.
So if you're a successor in title, you're bound by and have the benefit of this development
Okay,
agreement.
okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Having failed contract law, I have no comment. No other questions? Charlene, do you have some comments?
Just a couple things. I'm delighted that all the parties came to an agreement as the town planner until Monday. I think this is a great project. They addressed all my concerns at the last meeting. I have provided you with a proposed findings, also some facts, proposed finding of facts, and then also some suggested conditions. One condition I want to bring your attention to is that the landscape plan doesn't actually mirror the final site plan. So my recommendation would be that prior to any work commencing at the project site, a revised landscape plan be submitted to the planning board and the town clerk for the case file. Not much is going to change in what the landscape plan shows, but it needs to mirror the approved site plan. So that was
We
the
agree with that.
only condition that I added, beyond the fact that any changes to the site plan have to come back to this board, and then also the proposed condition by Attorney Ford.
Joe?
I just want to compliment the principal, Mr. Manning, and the two abutters to be able to do this, be able to put it together to make it work. I'm sure it meant a lot of hard work for the two guys sitting at that table, but it doesn't work unless they all cooperate, and I think it's a great project. I think it's going to make a big difference in Howard Sports Center. So I give you my plaudits for all the hard
Guy
work.
sitting back there that had a lot to do with too, Mr. Kroll.
I know that.
He was,
Oh, Counselor, sorry, I didn't see you.
Good. Any other comments? Mr. McFarland?
Move to close the public hearing.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing.
Make a motion that we adopt the following proposed findings of fact.
All in favor
All
first?
in favor, aye.
aye.
Sorry.
Continue.
Proposed findings of fact, one, there will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. Two, the plan provides for efficient and safe disposal of surface water. Three, the use is consistent with the zoning code and will not adversely affect the neighborhood. Four, the specific site is an appropriate location for the use and structure. Five, the use is permitted in the Village Commercial Overlay District, and the plan demonstrates harmony with the purpose of the district. Six, landscaping will be adequate. Seven, lighting and other site plan details are adequate. Eight, the request waivers or modifications of the dimensional requirements will not substantially derogate from the purpose and intent of this bylaw, that such waiver or modification may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood or overall public good. 9, 38.5% of the floor area is dedicated to commercial use. 10, the parking as waived is adequate for the proposed uses. 11, there is a minimum of 5,000 square feet of lot area per residential unit.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Motion to approve the special permit and requested waivers and modifications pursuant to 325-51.L for the development within the Village Commercial Overlay District for redevelopment of the property located at 557, 563 Route 28, based on the fact that the project is in keeping with the VCOD historic development patterns, including the size and spacing of structures, that the granting of waivers or modifications will not substantially derogate from the purpose and intent of this bylaw, and that such waiver or modification may be granted without substantial detriment to the neighborhood or overall public good.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Just for clarification on exactly who's voting, everybody's saying aye, but the only votes that count are actually Mary's, Linda's, Tom's, Jim's, Larry's, Joe's, and David's,
Thank you.
Because they were the original
because
seven.
they were the original seven.
Thank you.
Next vote, to approve the site plan special permit and waiver requested with conditions for the proposed redevelopment of property at 557, 563 Route 28, based on the fact that the application meets the necessary requirements and criteria for approval pursuant to the Code of Town of Howard with the above findings. The following conditions are imposed. 1, prior to any work commencing at the project site, a revised landscape plan shall be submitted to the planning board and the town clerk for the case files. 2, any changes to the site plan shall be subject to further planning board review. 3, the development agreement, the easements and plans referenced therein shall be incorporated by reference into the special permit granted by this board. However, the performance of the obligations of each party to the developer's development agreement shall not be a condition of the special permit, as the development agreement has independent legal significance and is enforceable by the parties thereto.
Second.
It's been moved in, Charlene.
Discussion, would you, I think a couple board members would also prefer that you include the first paragraph in that third condition. I don't think you need to read the whole thing, but as long as the board is good with including that first, I think it is important to include that first paragraph.
Fine?
Okay?
Yeah, and I'm fine with that, too.
It's good, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Next, a vote on a mixed-use special permit. To approve the use special permit pursuant to 325-51.m of the Howard zoning code based on the above findings.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next, to approve the use special permit to 325-51 of the Howard zoning code based on the above findings.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I think that completes it, Mr. Chairman.
Anything we've missed?
I don't think so. It's been very thorough. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Construction tomorrow morning?
Not until they do the landscape plan.
We'll get the landscape plan right up. Thank you.
Okay.
I just have two very quick things. Sorry I didn't pass this out. If everybody can take one and pass it down. This is the proposed schedule for 2017. And I'll wait until everybody gets one. We went through, Elaine and I went through and looked at the appropriate dates. The only date that we are questioning whether the board wants to meet or not is actually April 11th. Passover begins the previous evening at sundown. I don't know how the board feels about holding meetings on high Jewish holidays or not. It's entirely up to you all.
Probably not something we have to address right now.
Well, no, but,
Yeah.
you know, it's,
W-
we can leave it as the 11th as we get closer. The only thing is if people make application, you know, closer to those dates. That's generally not a public hearing date,
When's Easter?
always on a Sunday.
Why, that's helpful.
I don't know.
Might be the next.
Yeah, I
We have it
honestly
on the
don't know.
Jewish calendar so
So-
we can balance it out.
If you wanted to do it not on a Jewish holiday, I would suggest that you do it on that Thursday, which would be the 13th.
Yep.
I think we run,
April 16th. See, just as fast with a piece of paper.
I think we run a risk with regard to the open meeting law and allowing the maximum participation in these meetings by holding a meeting on any of the Jewish holidays.
So would you like to be on the 13th, a Thursday?
I would rather have that switch from the 11th. Now, the issue of switching meetings to Thursday, Al, if I remember correctly from when I was chairman, didn't you have problems with meeting?
I'm all done with that.
You're all done, okay, then that comment goes by the board.
So April 11th becomes April 13th?
Okay. This isn't something you need to vote on, it's just, you know,
Yeah.
consensus. So we will finalize that. We realized we needed to get this done because we have a deadline in December. So it was like, ooh, we need to get this done. The other thing I just wanted to make you aware of is 15 Evergreen. The board approved a site plan for that back in 2013. I did an inspection, actually wrote them and said there's a number of things that I don't understand, met at the site. Everything has been ironed out, and I've signed off on that site plan as being complete. 15 Evergreen, it's off of Old Main in North Harwich, in the industrial area. What was it? A metal building with parking and lots of Leyland cypress. There's a joint property next door, so they have a cross easement for access and stuff.
There's housing there, isn't there?
Further down,
Yeah.
further down.
Fine.
So that was all I wanted to, and Ally starts on Monday, yay! And the planning office has actually now changed. It's not in its previous location, so if you do go to look for her, it is actually where the conservation agent used to be. The conservation agent is now in the planning office, and the two offices have been switched.
But still right over here,
No,
No, it's to your left.
it's over here.
back in the
Looks
corner.
at- looks
Back
at-
in the
looks
corner,
at the
yeah.
parking lot.
It does look out over the parking lot. The office is very nice.
Looking out over the trees.
Is that part of the hiring agreement?
Nope, not at all. We just wanted to make a couple changes, and while the offices were vacant, and Amy Usowski, who's now where the planner was, is delighted. She loves the office, so.
And if we're gonna be away over the winter, we should tell you.
Tell me, not during a meeting, because people don't need to know out in the public whether you're here or not in town, but definitely let Elaine and I know, and we'll coordinate with Ally. That way we know in advance if we're going to have a quorum issue. Oh, and the last thing is, you have absolutely nothing at this point for the meeting, first meeting in November, which is the 10th. So that may very well be canceled. We will keep you, if something comes in that we need to address, then we need to do that. You do have 2 public hearings scheduled for the second meeting in November, which, as you may recall, changed from the 22nd to the 29th of November. So it's not the week of Thanksgiving.
And it should be canceled because it's the 221st birthday of the United States Marine Corps.
For Uncle Sam's misguided children.
Hoorah. Although that's Army, not Marine, so,
They use it too.
okay. I'm from an Army family. That's all I have.
Is there any new business to come before the board? And Peter, we're sorry about your father's passing.
Thank you, appreciate your
Oh, I'm
condolences.
so sorry. I did not know that.
And Peter and I were discussing that before the meeting. We both think that we'll possibly outlive his father at 101. Yeah.
I doubt it.
Wow.
It's a long,
You did something right.
Okay, no new business before, any old business? Any briefings or reports?
We're gonna start voting, sorry, I haven't got my calendar with me, but we're going to start voting on the capital outlay stuff.
This Thursday.
Thank you.
I'll see you there.
This
Oh, wait a
Thur-
minute. No. I beg your
Next week.
pardon. I'm thinking of CPC. Next Tuesday.
In other words, everybody has
Wednesday.
made their presentations, the various departments, and now we'll vote what is or isn't gonna be in the capital outlay program.
and if I may, Mr. Chairman, on that topic, the CWP is now fully approved and accepted, no more ways out. So we will be at town meeting.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, the Community Preservation Committee will be starting to review applications starting this Thursday. We have a schedule which, if I remember correctly, is meeting every other Thursday for the next, well, it will be 4 meetings, so it would be for 8 weeks, with the idea of reviewing all the applications, having the discussions, and getting to the point where we would be able to vote.
Are you at liberty to say how much money you people have?
If I knew, I would tell you. I think and Bob has tried to explain that as best he can and give us the best.
I mean, I know where it
information
comes from
possible.
and everything, but.
Yeah, give us the best possible information, but to be very honest with you, I don't completely understand it as of yet.
Linda?
On Wednesday afternoon, we're going to be reviewing the housing production plan draft, and it looks pretty good at this point, so committee will review it, and then we're probably going to hold at least a public meeting and then present it to the, hopefully a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board.
What committee is that, the chair?
Housing production plan, redoing the housing production plan.
It's a working group.
It's a working group.
And
You
you're
guys
gonna-
put me on it.
and so you're gonna make like a recommendation?
The whole, the housing production plan, which is 100 pages, and it says this is what we should be doing for affordable housing production. Goals, objectives, who should do what. The last one was done 7 years ago, so this is should be updated every 5 years,
And where are we with respect to the 10%?
somewhere around 5, tad over 5.
If I may, how do we compare with other towns in that respect, percentage?
It's all over the
It's
spectrum.
all over the place.
Really, huh?
But nobody's full, are they?
Yes, Boston
There's
is.
one town,
Boston.
No, on Cape Falmouth might be.
I thought it was down the other end,
Providence? Not
Yeah.
Truro.
not Truro, but,
No.
I just wondered, that's all.
Charlene, that seminar we were just at? You can
Yeah.
look it up on that website.
Yeah, you can look it up on their website.
we have it all, it's all in the housing
Yeah.
production plan, I just don't remember.
Provincetown
Somebody
is
getting
very close.
Provincetown is close to that 10%. Most other places
Yep.
are,
And also, it gets updated based on the federal census. So in 2000, a town may have been at 10%, but then in 2010, they look at the housing stock and everything,
number
and you
changes
might
again.
drop back down to 8% because there's been more housing, market rate housing developed and not as much. So
it is a moving
it
target.
is a moving target,
But at this point, we've been hovering around the 5%.
which actually is not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad.
It beats Weston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Any other business to be brought before the board?
Motion to adjourn.
Been moved,
Second.
seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? See you in whenever.
Might be a month,
Might be a month.
but come in and visit Ally.